Hi, and welcome to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm Brad Williams. On this episode, I'm having a conversation with Todd Meehan, professor of percussion and associate dean of graduate studies at Baylor University. We talk about his journey as a percussionist, including what first drew him to the instrument, his time as a student performer, and the way he continues to push the boundaries of what percussion can be. He also shares his insight into his role as an educator, mentoring the next generation percussionists at Baylor, and how he balances the dual roles of professor and associate dean. I had a great time talking with him, and I know you're going to gain a lot of insight from his wisdom. So here's my conversation with Todd Meehan. Todd, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. I've been a fan of yours for a while. I first heard about you and saw you through a series of fun YouTube videos of you. I just enjoy your sense of humor around the world of percussion and just love your approach to it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Todd Meehan.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I had this period that coincided with a 1-semester sabbatical from Baylor, which produced a number of things. But one of the things it produced was at least the initial portion of a lot of those videos, because I had free time on my hands for once. So. Yeah, it's my one regret out of all of this is that, once things got back into kind of normal life post sabbatical, that I wasn't able to keep up that level of output. But I do have a little notepad of just probably close to 100 new ideas for if ever there comes a time for me to make new video content. I'll be ready.
Yeah, it's like the. I don't know if you've watched any of the Dave King videos. It's like the Dave King of percussion. He's the Todd Meehan of drum set, and you're the equivalent. It's fantastic. Yeah.
I remember watching and loving those Dave King videos early on. That's same similarity.
Yeah, it's fun. So you are Director of Percussion and Associate Dean of Graduate Studies at Baylor, which you've been there for now, over 20 years, right?
Yeah, so I started in 2003. At a nice young age, and kind of went through all of the faculty ranks along the way. And over the past several years, I've started absorbing more and more admin work along with my teaching and running the percussion studio.
So how many students are undergrad and graduate are in the studio?
So we're kind of a what I always tell our prospective students who are looking at Baylor, we're kind of a medium small percussion studio, at least compared to some of our neighboring institutions or institutions across the country. We usually probably find ourselves in the 12 to 14 student range total, with most of those being undergrad. The graduate program at Baylor is relatively small, and it's almost all master's students. We've got a small doctoral contingent within our church music program, but the vast majority of our grad students are master's students. So within the percussion studio, we have anywhere from 2 to 3 grad students at any one time, and everyone else is an undergrad, tending to split pretty evenly between music performance and music education.
That's great. And I would imagine that gives you a lot of one-on-one time with the students, as well as gives them a lot of playing opportunities while they're doing large ensembles, chamber music. I imagine that's a really good playing situation for them.
Yeah, so that's kind of the recipe for us is pretty low student to teacher ratio, but some still some fairly significant playing demands, and well, I guess what we uh, label more as performance opportunities. But yeah, with that number of students and our large ensemble needs, we have a fantastic large ensemble program between our bands and our orchestra. Um, there's a lot of playing that the students get to do. So yeah, it's very high on performing experience um, in the large ensemble realm, and then of course we do a ton of that within our chamber music program and the Baylor Percussion group too.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched some videos from the studio YouTube channel, and playing some fantastic rep and playing it really well too. So yeah, kudos to you all for just doing some great work there. It's really nice. Um,
Yeah, thank you. It's a great group of students. It's especially with the more kind of the added admin work that I do. I mean, I enjoy that in a separate way, but it's always nice. Like today was a big teaching day, so I had number of lessons right after each other, and that's it kind of feels like a nice break now just to get to work with the students
yeah,
on rep.
yeah, absolutely. How did the opportunity at Baylor come your way?
Yeah, so it was interesting. It's you know a lot of what we tell our students, which is I mean, I guess you'd throw it into the category of networking, but I think with my personal version of that, it was more just kind of getting to know someone when I had an opportunity to. So I was post masters. I did my masters at Yale, and I stayed in New Haven for another 2 years, doing two things at the same time. One of those things was continuing to play with kind of the first iteration of So Percussion, because that's where the group was formed. And but I'd also just gotten married, so I needed like a job. So I managed the undergraduate orchestra at Yale, the Yale Symphony, and in the latter part of my time there, we had a guest conductor come through, Stephen Hyde, who was the resident conductor of both the Baylor Symphony Orchestra and the Waco Symphony Orchestra. And my job was to take care of him while he was with us for a week conducting the orchestra. So I was kind of his, I don't know, handler, I guess. And, so we just kind of hit it off and formed a quick friendship over the course of that week. And he told me at that time that my predecessor at Baylor, Larry Van Landingham, was I think getting close to retirement. He was having some finding some health issues at the time, and so when Larry had to step down, Steve reached out and said, "Hey, you should apply." So I mean, it's one of those things where we try to kind of instill this in our students all the time of just how important those connections are, but realizing that they're not always, you don't always see them coming. And I think when they pan out the best is in a nice organic way that's not contrived or not forced. It's just um, I met a colleague and we had some stuff in common. He knew that I was eager to get back to Texas. I'm from Texas originally, and so he just shared the word. And obviously, I still had to apply and do a good interview and win the audition and stuff like that. But yeah, that was the way back.
That's great. Yeah, just the importance of building relationships, because you just don't ever know, and you weren't seeking them out for a gig or anything like that.
Right.
It just organically happened, which is amazing. Yeah,
Right.
that's great. Yeah. So my son, I think I told you this when we were communicating. My son studied at LSU with Brett Dietz, and
Right.
he now lives in Austin, not doing anything with his percussion degree. He has an
Right.
IT job, just like his old man
Yeah.
did. I studied percussion as well at Belmont back
Yeah.
100 years ago, not doing anything with it, but
Right.
understanding, just that I think I owe so much of studying music just to understand how to function in the world of knowing the process, and it's so beneficial and just cross pollinating in my new career path. And I would imagine you probably see that and instill that every day with your students.
Yeah, I mean that's such a huge part of it. We have a relatively new dean who's leading things now at Baylor, and it's one of the big things that he has talked to us a lot about is all of this soft skill development that happens concurrent with our music study, and some stuff that we're sometimes we don't like necessarily point at and name and say, hey, by the way, you're learning how to whatever, negotiate or communicate,
Mm-hmm.
but so much of what we have to do and what we have to navigate, particularly as percussionists, just kind of the added wrinkle of logistics and the schlep, and like there's so many other things that are rolled into what it means to be a music student or a percussion student, and being able to lean on those soft skills that are developed alongside all of the great musical skills, I think is really really important, and maybe even more important these days than ever. As we have at least at the university level, a lean towards interdisciplinary study and seeking out those opportunities, and as you said, kind of cross pollinating, and just being able to I don't know, to open up more possibilities. I think that's if all we're doing is training people to have great hands, that I don't know, that's such a in the end, it's actually a weirdly small part of everything that we have to
It
do.
really is. Yeah.
So I think recognizing all of that other stuff is really, really vital.
Yeah. I think, and I've talked to a lot of percussionists on here who have like symphony orchestra jobs, and there's so much like organization that is required to be a percussionist, just to in terms of equipment and part assignments. And I mean, there is so much of those executive functions that are required to be able to be a professional musician, but specifically a percussionist.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's not in a lot of time, at least in my experience, a lot of times we're not necessarily taught that in an overt way. We're basically given experiences and opportunities to do that and
Right.
learn that
Yeah.
and a lot of those things maybe we should be more proactive about really kind of teaching how here's how you do this. But I mean, still to this day, in my position, every new wind ensemble or orchestra cycle, I'm making the part assignments for our percussion students, and I mean, it's still kind of a headache to be
Sure.
honest, you know.
Absolutely.
Um,
Especially as you are programming more and more contemporary music, right?
yeah,
I mean, it requires everything and the kitchen sink, and
that's right.
then yeah, and then thinking of how do we get from piece A to piece B, and this overlap of equipment. Yeah, there it makes my head hurt just thinking about it right now.
I know, but I mean, it's it's literally one of my job duties, and
Sure.
I probably never thought that that was going to be kind of a consistent job duty. Even when I was just joining the professional ranks and looking for university teaching gigs, it's there's so many similar activities and tasks and duties to that that. It ends up being a lot of the day, like today
Sure.
I had 3 lessons, so I had 3 hours of actual hands-on teaching, but I still have 3 pages of canvas open where I need to feed in my response and my feedback to the students and make sure that they get that in a timely fashion, so that they've got their marching orders for the week to come. And all of us probably fighting the email monster. I've got probably 25 emails that I didn't get a chance to respond to, and um, how do we navigate that stuff? But I do think a lot of the problem solving skills that are inherent and embedded in what it means to be a percussionist help us to kind of navigate those waters maybe a little bit more easily than if we weren't percussionists. I think
Right.
it gives us a nice head start into kind of knowing how to multitask on that level and take care of all of those things.
Sure. In your time at Baylor, there's been so much that has happened in the world of technology, both just in terms of in the performance space, but also just in terms of how people learn and and everything in between. How have you seen that change in the studio, or even maybe how students learn, or maybe some of the barriers that you have to break down where there's so much
Yeah.
technological dependence now? How have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of a different paradigm. And I don't know, I was talking earlier this morning before my teaching. I had a little Zoom meeting with Mike Compitello, who teaches at Arizona State, and he's one of my very favorite people in the percussion field. Super smart guy. I love hearing him talk and just hear his thoughts. We were talking about curriculum development and kind of the modern day student and how they're different. And after that, then going in and teaching my lessons. I think a lot of what our students are bringing in now is they do have kind of an overwhelming amount of information available to them, just in general, in life, but that bleeds into every part of life, and that including how many reference recordings or videos are available for a certain piece that they're playing, and like the access that they have now to information. It's just a world. It's a different world. And I remember I was thinking this during one of my lessons today. When I was a student, an undergrad student, kind of in the mid to late '90s, like the reference recording took, like I would have to walk to the library. I would have to go and look up if, the library had this CD or record. I would have to sit down and listen to it in the library, and of course, audio only, and very little video content at that point. There's just a lot of obstacles, and those obstacles, many of them have been um, eliminated, which is great on some level, but sometimes, kind of information overload as well. And so I mean, today in a lesson, we were talking about how, using, performance practice and the video content that we're able to have easy access to is, that's some source material there. But then, the score itself is still, our primary guide
Right.
in the
Sure.
process. And then, you can go old school and just listen to pure audio. Like that's actually really effective too, without the visual element to it. And how do we bring all of those things together? Sometimes it maybe requires putting, a few more guardrails on, kind of tapping into all of these sources. And not that any of them are inherently bad, or like, hey, let me warn you against this one or this one. I think it's all good to take all that in, but it's very influential, and whether they're consuming stuff, via YouTube or just as little clips in social media. I mean, that's kind of how it's built, right? It's built to be
Right.
influential, to influence them, it looks a certain way. It garners a lot of attention, so it's just like an added wrinkle, I guess. And so part of, I guess part of what someone who is my age, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm kind of straddling the,
Yeah, I'm 48 years old, so I think we're probably we're in
we're
the
exactly.
same neighborhood. Yeah.
And I mean, I love all this stuff, and I love digging into it, and I love that I have the same access to all of this that the students do. Um, uh, but I'm constantly kind of wrestling with that, in terms of like, how I learned, though, and are there still benefits to the way that I learned, maybe sans all of this stuff, uh, and just still making that possibility available, to the students. I don't know. I think for me that points us back more to kind of the human to human element of all of this. And so, I'll have students. We have a percussion literature course that I teach every 2 years, and I'll make sure that as part of that course, one of our projects is what I call a professional model project, which is identifying somebody in the field that is doing something that you think you would like to do, maybe, but not just watching videos of them or following them on Instagram, but reaching out to them and asking
Yeah.
for an interview, or a phone call, actually talking to them, sort of getting behind the profile, or whatever that kind of public facing image is, and discovering more about their story and how they got to where they were. And that's all facilitated and made easier through the technology available today. But it's still kind of an old school approach of like,
Yeah.
hey man, you just need to get on the phone and call somebody and ask them some questions, or find a way to get into a room with them. But
Yeah.
so
You just never know. I remember being in college and reaching out to John, the composer John Coriano, who was
yeah,
teaching at Juilliard,
yeah,
and I just left a message on his voicemail at Juilliard,
yeah,
and he like
yeah,
called me back. I'm
right.
like, you just never know, right? And it taking that active approach. It's pretty cool. You never know what can happen from it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's so interesting to hear. I did a similar thing with David Maslanka when I was an undergrad. I was playing one of his marimba solos, and of course I played a lot of his wind band music. I was at UT at the time, so I did a lot of wind band, heavy wind band rep, and I just thought, well, man, I don't know, I should reach out to him, but I didn't have his phone number, so I actually got his mailing address from Jerry Johnson, the director of bands at UT, and I wrote him a letter. This is like so old school. And just like John Corigliano did for you, he wrote me back, and he answered my questions. And like I was, for me, I was like, oh, this is unbelievable. I can't believe he actually wrote me back. But it did also illustrate that even though that probably took a few more steps than it would take these days for our students to get in touch with people like that, it's still a tight knit community. It's still a community that kind of needs to support itself and each other in it in order for any of it to work. And so if you have someone who's reaching out saying like, hey, I really love this thing that you do, would you talk to me a little bit more about it? Who's going to say no to that? They have to
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened to me. Yeah, it was just like, yeah, he just talked to me and answered my questions. It was like, how cool of a guy are you? It was
yeah,
amazing.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
As you're talking about, source material and reference recordings, I went to several summer music programs when I was in high school, and I remember one summer we were like doing the Rite of Spring, and I just remember taking a case full of CDs with me with all of these different recordings. And I think about that a lot to think, I remember bringing all of these recordings to listen. And now you would just pull it up on your phone or your
Yeah,
iPad or something, and almost any recording that's ever been released is right there at your fingertips.
right,
You know,
right.
and
Yeah,
I think for me, I see benefits of both because there was a little bit more of an active thing happening there by buying the recordings, knowing which timpanists I wanted to listen to,
right.
and it felt like a little bit more of an exercise in being active in that than maybe just pulling up the first recording that you find and listening to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's good science behind like the power of, good learning having some level of struggle to it. And, that you have to like working for a thing, helps imprint it more deeply.
Yeah,
And yeah, even a process like that of just, finding that stuff. I mean, I remember doing the same thing of like, okay, if I want to listen to Cloyd Duff, okay, then I need to get the George Sell recordings with the Cleveland Orchestra from this period to this, and like that took research.
Yes.
and but that solidified then, like, oh, okay, well then these were his dates in the Cleveland Orchestra, and that was helpful for me to start categorizing, like, when these people were where they were in these schools of playing, and then you kind of see the kind of family tree of their students and all
Yes.
that stuff, and that was, I don't know, that was very helpful to me, or I found it very meaningful to understand that, I think, at a deeper level.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I could have, I, I, I lived that exact thing that you're talking about right now. Just, yeah, that lineage and understanding the who was where and then who was before and who came after. Yeah, it was a really wonderful exercise to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, I noticed in the on the YouTube channel this wonderful piece that was commissioned for you, which had to have been an incredible honor. And I'd love to know a little bit more about that piece and when in the process did you learn about it and what was that like?
Yeah, yeah.
We're talking
Yeah,
about Gardens by Ivan Trevino, which is a
yeah,
beautiful piece of music, by the way.
yeah. It was a really special project, and so yeah, this was just a really nice gift and thought, from my students and from the studio. There were kind of a handful of students who spearheaded the project, and they knew that Ivan and I were friends. Years ago, Ivan did a little bit of adjunct teaching for us. He was actually my sabbatical replacement
Oh, okay.
when I left to make the videos. But then we were able to keep him for a little bit longer as an adjunct, and then now he's teaching full time at UT Austin. But yeah, we've remained close since then. So they I forget when it was exactly, but I think it was at the end of like one of our studio classes. We were closing up, and they're like, "We have something we want to share with you." And so they told me about it, and I was like, "Oh my, that's like so sweet. It's so nice. Like I would never have expected that." And so yeah, they kind of crafted the project, working with Ivan, obviously, and then tapping into some of our alumni. Um, Mainly from the time since I've been here, not the pre my time at Baylor, but the students that I've had the pleasure of working with since 2003, and building a consortium. And then Ivan was gracious enough to, I think, regardless of the outcome of that consortium, which we had a lot of people uh, you know contribute, and I'm very grateful for that. But I think he was going to write the piece anyway, and then once it was written, it was we had to kind of finagle a way for. I didn't want to hear it and coach it until it was going to be premiered. So I have a wonderful colleague now at Baylor, Arlo Schultes, who teaches with me within the percussion studio. So we just said, okay, Arlo's going to coach it. I'm not going to be around ever when it's being rehearsed. And then it was premiered at one of our Baylor Percussion Symposium events. Now maybe 2 years ago, I guess 2 or 3, and yeah, it was beautiful, and it quickly became one of my favorite percussion ensemble pieces. Not because it was written for me. I actually really like the piece, and but yeah, I think Ivan kind of captured things that are important to me in a really meaningful and perfect musical way,
Yeah.
if I may say so. And then my students also commissioned a piece of visual art to kind of go along with it, which was really, really nice. So anyway, it was just a lovely gesture, and I feel so indebted to my students, my former students, and people who contributed, and of course Ivan for doing it. And then we had the opportunity to record and put out this nice video, working with some of my former students, Taylor Davis and Ricky Bracamontes, who have this media company called 2x1 Media, and talking about kind of soft skills or other skills being developed. Taylor and Ricky both did their undergrad work with me as percussion percussionists, music ed students, but they got into the video recording and editing and all of that side while they were here. And then they've developed this company, and they've done a lot of excellent work, not just here locally, but for a lot of different schools. So anyway, it was kind of this perfect coming together of a lot of things. I didn't expect it, which is probably what made it even more special.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Yeah,
I really enjoy it.
yeah. I think it'll always remain one of my favorites.
Yeah, no, I agree. Speaking of Steve Reich, I noticed kind of a through line with some work you've done with Doug Perkins. I saw some videos, and then some videos on Baylor's channel. I get the feeling that Steve Reich is kind of an important figure for you as a percussionist and as a musician. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes. Yeah.
Me too. That's he's the be all end all for me. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. And it has been a really nice through line that both, when I was a student, and then, especially kind of early professional performance career, but then very much all along the way with my teaching as well. In fact, we're Baylor Percussion Group concert this fall is going to be kind of a minimalist focus concert. So we'll be doing 2 of Steve's works on that concert. And anytime we do that and program it, I always ask the students, have you ever played any of Reich's music? And I mean, sometimes some people have, but a lot of times they haven't. And I always tell them, like, okay, it's really amazing. It's very, very cool. When you first do it, there are parts of it that are actually really kind of uncomfortable and tricky in ways that maybe you wouldn't, expect. And I kind of think back to, the first Reich piece I did when I was a junior during my undergrad years was just clapping music. So obviously it wasn't one of the more involved pieces, but I remember being like, kind of confoundingly tricky of like, oh, how do I do this? How do I, it's like, it doesn't, I don't know. But then have lived, now many, many, many years, decades, um, playing his music and working through deeply through other pieces. In the early days of percussion, I was just telling my students this. One of the first pieces that we learned as a group, there's a handful of kind of these core pieces that we learned, but one of them was part one of drumming, and Doug taught it to the rest of us because he had previously done it during his undergrad years in Cincinnati with Percussion Group Cincinnati, and he had learned it by rote, and that's how he taught it to us. And that was very frustrating to me because I like to see music, but he was like, no, we're just going to get up and we're going to do this. I'm glad I did it that way. I'm glad he took us through it in that way, and because I don't know, there's something about learning it in that manner that more deeply embedded it, and of course we played it a million times after that. But then all of that kind of expanding and getting to do other pieces of his sextet, all of drumming, music for 18. Doug and I, of course, have done the Goya marimbas a bunch, and then having various interactions with Steve over the years when we were still at Yale in the early days of Percussion. He came, and we were basically able to kind of be the house band for a lot of, playing a lot of his pieces, which was just amazing and unreal. And Doug and I had an opportunity to do another concert or two with him in New York, where we just played Nagoya, and then being around him for other bigger productions of drumming or music for 18. Always wonderful. He was, when I first started the Baylor Percussion Symposium, he's the first guest that we brought in, which was now, I guess, 15 years ago. And so we, did a big kind of portrait concert to him. And I haven't been around him in a number of years now, but it's still, I mean, obviously I'm programming two of his pieces, as we speak. So I feel like it's like a necessary, knowledge that we need to have as percussionists, the ability to play his works, and he's still with us, which is really cool. One of my students went to the So Percussion Summer Institute this summer at Princeton, and the So guys had Steve in for a Reich concert, and so that was really special for my student to get to be there and play Reich when Reich is there. And,
yeah.
It's no different than like what you just said with these connections to whether it's John Corleano or Maslenko, who's has since passed away. Like these people aren't going to be around for forever, but they are. Many of them are still here with us now, and again, the world is small enough that we can seek out these connections and these opportunities and actually get to do the music of these people with these people. And I don't know. I remember when I was younger and getting to hear stories of people who were able to play John Cage's music for John Cage, and that just like blew my mind. Like, how is that even possible? But that's it goes back to kind of that lineage thing, is that we're not so far disconnected from these people, whether that's geographically, and certainly that's easier now with technology, or just in terms of time, because our body of repertoire is so relatively young compared to others.
Yeah. One of the highlights of my life is when we lived in Atlanta, and my son and I drove up to Knoxville to the Big Ears Festival. Yeah. And this is when Steve they had him there for one of the years, and he performed clapping music, and then Johnny Greenwood was there and did Electric Counterpoint, and then
Wow. Yeah.
they did Radio Rewrite, which had just been premiered. It wasn't very long, and then they did Music for 18. And I'm
Wow.
sitting there with my son. I'm like, I'll remember this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Yeah,
That's really, really cool. Yeah.
yeah. Well, do you remember? Were you hip to his music before you performed any of it in college, or?
Just like vaguely, kind of knowing of it as like a thing I think I was supposed to know, but not with any level of intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my access to it, and sort of my own inroads into his music was through playing it, and then that exposed me to more and to more and to more, and obviously the stuff that is percussion related, but then his other music as well. It kind of opened things up for me.
I remember I was in high school one Sunday night. It's one of those things I still remember to this day. Listening to Georgia State Radio in Atlanta, and some college student the same night on his show played the desert music, which was I had heard, and then played Elliott Carter Concerto for Orchestra. I heard them back to back, and it was like, it's like from one extreme to the other, right? But my mind was completely blown by all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it's, I don't know, like that stuff is still so, I don't know, it just fascinates me. The composer aspect of all of what we do. And again, I was talking to another student about this today, comparing, we were talking about solo marimba repertoire, and he's playing Mirage, and I was kind of telling him that this is, I mean, technically it's kind of an older piece for us, even though it's still, we still play it a bunch, but that, if we compare that obviously to the repertoire of piano or cello or violin or whatever, it's not old, it's not that old, but like the composer part, I think because the way we study classical music, especially, as we're in school, and when we read about Bach and read about Beethoven and read about all these people that we know, of course, we can't have any personal interaction with, as all of that culminates, if we're learning it, linearly or chronologically, and we get to Steve Reich, or we get to Carter, we get to these people, some of whom are still with us, some of whom are not, but like we kind of think of them in the same way, like I don't think of Reich as any different from Beethoven. Obviously they write very, very different music, but I value them both in a similar fashion, and knowing that one of them is someone who is still among us, and like that we have access to. That's just I don't, that part, and that's, I think, a big part of what early So Percussion, and probably the group would still say that today. But I mean, when Doug and I were still in the group early on, like that was the motivation. We one of our first big commission works was So-Called Laws of Nature from David Lang, and David, we knew just from his reputation and his association with Bang on a Can, and like we knew he was a cool composer who lived in New York. But like, I don't know, can we actually talk to this guy? And the answer was yes, we could. And then it's like that blew our minds. We were like, really? And then he's going to write a piece for, like, really? Like, is all this can really happen? And of course, when you're on the other side of it, when you're a little bit older, you say, well, of course it can all happen. Like, all of that can happen. Yeah. That's not unreasonable. We all, we're all part of the same community. We all need each other. We all, like David needed a young, crazy group to play really hard music if he wanted to write really hard music. And we, needed a big piece from somebody that we really looked up to. And so, it all works together, and maybe part of it is just kind of demystifying some of that for our students and letting them know that this stuff is at your fingertips if you want to engage in it.
When So started back then, what was the goal of the group? To kind of straddle the old and the new, and kind of honor the music that came before it, but still be cutting edge? Was that the goal of that ensemble, or did it just kind of happen that way?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I think that was whether that was explicit or implicit. I think it was in there somewhere. I mean, we started by playing cage third construction. So we knew that at least in terms of our own repertoire, okay, that was one of our old pieces, and but then also play, and really this started as we were just assigned to a piece together while we were at Yale, and we also played this piece, Village Burial with Fire, by English composer James Wood. And so that was, that wasn't as old as Third Construction, but it had been around for a little bit. It was probably at that time, I don't know, 10, 15 years old, something like that. But, James then came and worked with us. And so we all kind of got the, um, I don't know, we had a very good experience in doing that. And one thing then led to another, like, oh, okay, well, what if we expanded to then this next piece? Okay, well, Doug taught us drumming. Well, all right, now we've got third construction, we've got village burial, we've got drumming. And those are all pretty significant works. Okay, what do we need to kind of fill this in with? What other work is out there? And so searching for things that would be both programmatically interesting, um, but that would also potentially allow us to work with living composers. So I think the idea of that collaborative idea of creation, not that we're just interpreters of stuff that's already been written, but that like somehow we can come together and help to produce new pieces and contribute to the overall rep in that way. Yeah, that was really important. But the reality is I was in the group from the beginning until '03, 4 years, 1999 to '03, until I left to come down here. And Doug was in it for a few more years after that. And then he left, and then we eventually formed our duo. But the group is still going strong and doing great. And, Jason is the only original member who's still in it. But they're just, yeah, I'm so happy that I had that experience. And I'm so happy with what the group has become and what it's done and all of its initiatives. And, they finally got a Grammy win last year, and like just some really exciting things, very well deserved, because it's not easy to be in a professional percussion group, whether it's those guys or Third Coast or Sandbox. And I'm just naming the groups that I have a little bit closer connection to. Like, it's hard work, and it can be a slog, and it really takes a lot of dedication to do it, and to do it well. And all of those groups that I just mentioned have, and I'm just happy that we live in a musical world where they can exist
Right.
and can make a living out of it and contribute the way that they are.
Yeah. My funny connection to So is that I was Adam Slowinski's high school drumline instructor back in
Oh,
the
are you
90s.
serious?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
In Georgia. Yeah. And he's one of those people. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced players like this that are in high school. You're like, well, you're going to go and do something pretty special,
Yeah.
right?
Right. That's
Yeah.
really cool to hear. Yeah, I love Adam. He was, when he was entering the group, I was still in the group, so we spent some years together at Yale, and so we had so many talks early on before when he was thinking about joining the group and like starting to play with us. And anyway, yeah, I mean
Yeah.
he is basically practically a founding member because he was there almost at the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool to hear. And like it's the same thing, right? Like how connected all of this is. Like it's
Right.
just nothing is too far away.
That's
Like,
exactly right.
I taught that guy in high school.
It was his high school drumline instructor for a period. Yeah. And we both
Right.
studied with Jack Bell from the ASO. And, it is funny how the percussion, and not just percussion, but the musical family tree, it's all connected. It's
Right.
amazing. And that's why those, as we talked about relationships and just building those soft skills, it's just so crucial to understand that, because chances are you're going to come back in contact with someone at some point in your career. So it's
Absolutely.
best to be professional and be kind and
Yeah.
respectful from the beginning, because you may see them at some other point in your life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, honestly, with, just to kind of cite another example of that, and especially in the early days of So, because we had some shifting, and Tim Feeney, who was originally in the group, he was the first one to leave. And so that's who, I guess, Adam was taking over his position. Like kind of the criteria that you form for, all right, we need a new member of this team. And like, sure, obviously we want a great player, like in order to do the rep that we were doing, like you need somebody who can really play. But the thing that ended up, proving more important is like, are they a good person? Can we get along? Like that, it's that stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's the stuff. It's not just, who can play the fastest or be the best or whatever any of that means. Like weirdly, that stuff is kind of a push, because there's a lot of people that, I mean, there's plenty of people who play way better than I do. Like that's not, I'm, it's all of these other things which are, to set up a group like that, to have an existence that goes years and years and years and years and years. It only works if like the right pieces are involved. It only works if the people can work together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a no go. And so, yeah, I mean, we're I know that seems simple and silly to say, and communication and collaboration as soft skills, but it's like they actually really matter.
It really matters. And, I think about a sports team that will stack the deck with all these superstars, and then they can't go out and win a championship. And there's something to be said about chemistry and finding people that know how to work well with each other. And that's sometimes talent is the takes the back seat to being
Yeah,
a collaborative person working with each other.
yeah, and the thing that yields the best result, that even the best sort of artistically, um, um, the thing that has more viability artistically is actually the synthesis of the people, not just the four superstar players who can all play circles around everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
There's other stuff involved for sure.
Yeah. So before we go, what refills your tank? What do you do that's not percussion? And what music do you listen to that's not on a marimba?
Yeah, yeah. It's more and more the older I get, it's all of that stuff that is detached from what I do each day is more and more important.
I agree.
So, I guess I'll answer that in two ways. First of all, the stuff I do that has nothing to do with music. So I do love to garden. I love to be outside. I love to hike. I am living where I live in Texas. We are just coming out of what we would call the dark season, where you can't go outside because, of course, it's too hot. And we can almost see, like, the mornings are now starting to be somewhat tolerable. So I'm very excited about the season to come, including all throughout winter, because even though the leaves are all off the trees here, it's actually pretty mild throughout
Yeah.
winter. So we're coming into a good season of just being able to be outdoors. My wife and I love to travel. We love being in the desert if we can. So yeah, that stuff very much refuels me. In terms of music, so I kind of have a pattern of when I drive my youngest son to school every day. So he's in cross country right now, so we're driving to school quite early. It's dark. I put on like ambient or drone music, and I just need to like set the tone for the day with that.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so it's calming, and it's centering, and it's I don't know, it kind of feeds me in a good way. I mean, otherwise, I still explore a lot of different types of music, but if I'm just putting music on to like relax, it'll be like, I don't know, whatever people want to call their genres these days, but like indie folk, I have really enjoyed. My youngest son is kind of a he's not a classical musician. He plays guitar, but he's really into music. So like the stuff, like to watch him getting into Radiohead is like it's
Oh, cool.
cool.
Yeah.
It's just like or to any band that I was listening to, like in the '90s and beyond. Of like,
Yeah.
it's great to see you discovering that, but then also, he'll play stuff for me of like I have no idea who this group is, but it's really really cool, and I'm learning stuff through him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm still, I would call myself pretty open to things, but I do have to be careful about what I'm sort of musically feeding myself, because it is such a mood influencer. And it's
I'm
like,
with you. Yeah.
I don't know, at this point in my life, I feel like I'm carrying so much stress of just job and life, and our kids, one's in college and one's in junior in high school, and it's just like that time of life, which is just like, all right, it's all happening right now. So sometimes I just need to do something to like, I just need to diffuse as much as possible.
I'm with you. Yeah, and I feel like I only have so much time in my life to listen to music, so whatever I'm taking in had better be pretty good, right?
Right.
It's gonna
You know,
has to
the,
set me
the
in the
one,
right path.
yeah, the one thing that we've enjoyed lately, my wife and I specifically, and to some extent my my youngest son, is there was like, I used to, in high school and college, I used to go to a lot of concerts. Like I used to go see a lot of shows, which is like such a big part of my musical upbringing, and more like on the rock, punk, alternative scene. But I kind of stopped when I was like became a classical music student, and then I'd go to shows like to see Steve Reich or whatever, which is also really really cool. But I kind of stopped going to that other stuff, and then the past couple of years, my wife and I just started going to like concerts again, like just seeing artists that we like, not classical, but like just concert like shows, and just, I don't know, really enjoying those, and really trying to take like stuff from that of like, how can we make our percussion ensemble concert feel more like like a show and not like a recital, like what are these elements that make this so conducive to like an experience. So I don't know. That's been my kind of my reflection lately of
Yeah.
stealing from kind of the big genre of pop music, and what those performers do and do so well, are so engaging with what they do, and how can we kind of pull some of that back into what we do.
Yeah, I no, I'm with you. And I do think that there's a place for going and sitting in a quiet concert hall and listening, and but at the same time, it's nice to go and be in a room where you can feel the energy in the room of everyone around you, and
Right?
it's there's something to be said about that that's really
Yeah.
really nice. I'm with
Yeah.
you.
For sure.
Yeah. So yeah, and I do like the idea of bringing that to the concert hall a little bit, and that it doesn't have to be such a one-sided
Right.
experience.
Right.
I do like when if it feels a little bit more, again, as we've been saying all along, this collaborative thing even between the performer and the audience. I really like that idea.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Todd, I've had I could just sit here and talk to you, man. This has been so much fun just hanging out, and I just applaud you for the work you're doing, and obviously the influence that you're having on former students and the next batch of great musicians that you're working with at Baylor. And just best of luck to you, and enjoy a great year.
Well, thank you, and likewise, Brad. This has been really, really enjoyable. One of my favorite things is talking about all this stuff, and especially connecting with people that I haven't had opportunities to connect with in the past, and
Yeah.
so this has been really a pleasure.
Well, best of luck to you.